Hi, and welcome to the last of our 4 installments of the Industrial Revolution's presentations. These are notes 11 1D, and this is, of course, Mr. Marks. What we're going to talk here, what we're going to talk about here are some of the changes which come about because of the Industrial Revolution. Um, some good, some bad. Some of them, it's hard to judge. They changed our lives so tremendously. Um, the biggest change is going to be the move away from the cottage industry. We still use this term today. Cottage industry still exists, and a cottage industry is quite simply industry or work which is done in a cottage or in a home. Many people work out of home, and ironically, due to our new technology, we're actually starting to see a move of people starting to work instead of in offices. They're now starting to work back from home again because we have the technology in order to facilitate that. But as mentioned before, at the time, the easiest way to accomplish tasks was to distribute it out to lots of individuals. They did their work in their home and then they sold it off in or bartered it off when they met together in the town or something of the sort. People made their own clothes at home. They made different goods, within their home. If they were lucky enough or prosperous enough, they'd be able to get a larger space. Usually it would be connected to their home, which they would use in order to do a lot of their work. As first we see that movement of people from the agricultural communities, the rural communities, more into the urban communities. Um, as we first see that, we now have a large population of people that don't have that same space. They're put in much smaller areas. The homes are smaller. They're closer together. You're not able to spread out as much. It's hard to do a lot of work in there. On top of that, you have all of those new machines that were being created, and they're run by massive steam engines. And there's simply no place for that to be done in the home. So what we start to see is home life and work life becoming two very different things. And the main product of this are factories. Uh, Factories are quite simply places where workers or machines are brought together to produce goods. That no longer being done in the home, you now go off to a place to work. Um, there are a lot of advantages to this, especially for businesses. First of all, you don't have to try to waste a lot of time by going around to a lot of small places in order to collect the items which you're trying to sell. Now everything's being made in one place. People are able to have more specialized jobs, and so it's able to move from person to person a little bit quicker. You have these large machines that they're able to work day and night, that they can go nonstop. People completely change their lives around these new industries. The whole idea of just waking when the sun came up and then going to bed when the sun went down was gone. Now it was based off of machines, and the work whistle would tell people when they could eat. When it was a lunch break, when it was a dinner break. Were almost living their lives off of these machines. This makes for very productive work, but it doesn't necessarily make for the best working or living conditions. It doesn't make for the best life. For one, these factories, because many of them are steam powered, hence these chimney stacks you can see all over this representation of London at the time. With these chimney stacks or other sorts of things, these places got very hot. As you've probably noticed, just even in a classroom of this size, you get 10 people in here, it's not that bad. You get 20 people in here, it starts to get a little bit warm if there's not good airflow. You get 30 or 40 or 50 people into this kind of a space, just the amount of body heat that people are putting out makes for a very uncomfortable working area. On top of that, these machines didn't have a lot of fail-safes. They just ran unless something was done to break them down. And if your hand or your finger or your arm or your leg or your body ended up somehow getting caught, there was nothing to stop you from being maimed, mauled, or even killed by these machines. This was a very different world, and it was sudden. There had been factories before. People had gotten together, and simple machines had usually been powered using water off of rivers and water wheels. Windmills had been around for quite some time, but nothing with the power of these steam engines, with the unstoppable behavior of this that would change the way the world worked. While there are many good things that did come about from this, there was definitely one thing. I mean, working conditions by itself being bad was awful, but when it came to children now being in that, it just became that much worse. On the top right, you see a child who's, and this is, I have to mention, there were many much more graphic pictures that I could use to represent this. But this is a picture of a child's hand after it had been caught in one of the machines that young girl is by on the left. Children were preferred by business owners because they didn't complain as much, or you could beat them quiet much easier if they did complain. They were easier to control for that reason, and because they were smaller hands, smaller arms, they were able to get into some of these tight spaces in order to unjam machinery or other sorts of things that adults simply weren't able to do. You can see the picture below showing them children being used to push mine carts, and really you wouldn't have to dig out as much earth, less stuff for you to do if you can just send children down in order to deal with it. Thankfully, we've since that time come up with different child labor laws. In fact, your public education system is a means of trying to forestall child labor as well, to make it so you are required to do a certain amount of education. I know that some of you complain every once in a while about the limitations of how many hours you're allowed to work, and I know that sometimes your bosses or whatever find workarounds for it that aren't usually completely legal. But you got to realize these laws were put in there to protect you and to protect that innocence, to make it so people weren't just taking advantage of that and scarring children, literally for the rest of their lives. Now that's a lot of doom and gloom. So I wanted to end this whole thing on the Industrial Revolution actually with a pretty cool thing that happened as well. For the purposes of showing their technological progress, London built a crystal palace. It was constructed to symbolize the triumph of this industrial age, all of the things that it was able to accomplish, and this almost became a wonder of the world. It was divided into a series of courts that depict the history and art and culture, everywhere from ancient Egypt, where they had just made astounding discoveries, if you remember, during the Napoleonic time, through the Renaissance, as well as exhibits of industry and new machines and things dealing with the natural world. This was the rise of museums as we think of them. That they had existed before, but just taking everything on a much grander scale. And actually, World's Fairs, we still have them to some degree today. You have expos of different sorts, like the Consumer Electronics Expo, where they show off new technologies and other sorts of things so people can get really excited or get new ideas off of what's being done around the world. This is where this idea comes about. And it really does show the triumph of the age. As much as there are awful things about the Industrial Revolution, it definitely made it so our world could be more of a place that we have today as well. So just as a quick review, I want you to think about, all right, what types of power were used during the Industrial Revolution? I know I've really been harping on one, but I briefly mentioned another one just here in this presentation as well. And another important thing you got to take from these presentations, what are the 4 reasons, or what 4 reasons led to the Industrial Revolution beginning in Great Britain instead of other countries. Okay? Make sure that you've got that one down as well.